What is up, everybody? I bring to you the one and only Sleeping Comics, man. I've been wanting to have this genius on for a little bit. It's been almost a year since we last talked, and you picked the perfect day to come back on just when Bitcoin's breaking, $6,000 or $60,000. You're like, hey, Chad, let's have a chat. So good to see you, bro. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me. So how many Bitcoin do you have? 10, 30, 50?
You know what? I wish I could tell you I'd have 100, but I don't have much, man. I've got more of the altcoins. I'm trying to get rich. I'm trying to get more Bitcoin. How about you?
Yeah, my years ago I had, I think, like 5.75 or something like that. Years ago. And then I sold when it hit 20K because I thought, oh my Lord, it's never getting any higher than this, right? So I sold them years ago. I've gone back in, up and down a couple. I have a couple, not much anymore though.
I know, right? And bro, how much does this affect like the market, you think? Because I know like right now a lot of people are saying like, the bull cycle's coming back and maybe digital collectibles are going to start skyrocketing, but I'm like, I just don't know like how correlated they are, like if because collecting is something that never goes away.
I feel like it's all interconnected, right? It's all and really, I'm by no means an expert, but we've been screwing around with the thing for a couple of years now all together. But it's NFTs, crypto, blockchain, it's all interconnected. So right. And as we know, we feel like it's definitely cyclical. We know that, and really every market is. And then you look at you really look at Bitcoin leads the way. So right. It would be, in my mind, once again, it would be highly unlikely for, a different coin to like lead the way. I think it's just the way it is and what we've seen. It's interesting because, so many people have said this is what's going to happen. There's going to be an ETF, and after the ETF, the halving is going to happen and everything's going to go crazy. I mean, right. So were they all right? Is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? I don't know, but it's kind of fun to watch for sure.
That's an interesting one that you think that you said there. I do feel like sometimes it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like people will be like, well, I don't want to buy in now because I know, it's at a certain price and this is what these people are saying. So it's interesting that you say that because the psychology behind the movement is more important than the actual like objective facts. It's like, it's interesting.
It is. It's, the psychology for me has been so interesting because when I got in, 2015 or something like that, I was screwing around with Bitcoin. I was mining it down here. We talked about that last time.
Yeah.
And, it was so fringe. And of course, I felt like when I was doing it, I was late. I'm like, oh my gosh, this Bitcoin already cost $500 a Bitcoin. I'm like in here so late. I should have been buying it for $1 or Wow. And as I've stated before, no one in there, well, I guess maybe some people thought, but I certainly didn't think that it would get over $1,000 a Bitcoin. That was like the, oh my Lord, that's crazy. It would ever get to $1,000, Right. But, it's just, you have the entire earth that's interested in, this asset class now. And it is pure psychology. It's, kind of this crazy FOMO on top of, it's not just FOMO. I mean, we all know there are interesting, compelling elements to it all.
Right. And so this is where I get interested because, and we talked about kind of investing last time, but like Alex Becker, the big YouTuber, put out a tweet today and he's like 90% of people actually get wrecked in crypto, like 10% make it. But he's like, but when you look at some of this charts, you're like, oh, like this thing went from $50 to $1,000. And maybe it's not Bitcoin, but maybe it's an AI coin as an example, right? And yeah. I know we talked about it, like you can never time the bottom and you can never time the top to perfection, but a lot of people say like, oh, I could have done 100x. And it's like, well, only if you literally bought it at the exact right time, a year ago, and you're going to sell it by December this year, as an example, maybe you would get it perfect. But like, what's kind of some principles that we could take away there? Like, I think what you said to me last time is you get on the train, you get off the train, and if you're in the green, that's a good sign, right?
And I'm, fairly feeble. I always look for the double up. You'll hear me talk about that in my videos. And of course, who doesn't want a, 10 multiplier on their money, right?
Right.
And I certainly, don't always do that. And I've held on too long. A good example of that would be Secret Rare Spider-Man. Most people know I got into Secret Rare Spider-Man around 10K. I think is why I purchased my Secret Rare Spider-Man. And of course, we all know it the floor of it went to 100, and I think there's some actual sales there around 50 or 60. So should have sold, right? Didn't follow my rules, right? Should have sold.
Right.
But it's difficult to just manage it all, right? But I do think that, and it's so cliche, but there's so much money moving into crypto right now, whether it be, any of these altcoins, Bitcoin, whatever, that the chance of you doubling your money is actually seems to be pretty high if you can find the right one and the right timing. And the chance of you actually getting a times 10 modifier seems to be possible.
Right. Right. It's not that crazy. Like it just from what we're seeing, and I think a lot of it is timing as well, right? Like if you come in at the right time when there's a lot of disbelief, like I look back at like September and October of last year, and I'm like, man, anybody that was buying just like big coins, simple, stupid, like Fetch AI, Tau, like these things that are just like, okay, I think this could be a potential in the bull run. I mean, they're already up like 30x, and now you got new people coming in, and they're like, hey, it's just starting. But what they don't realize, it's already like really far in effect already. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
yeah, and we don't know what's going to happen, but if now we do have a couple cycles under our belt, so we kind of can guess.
yeah,
And it's probably going to push Ethereum, and then it's going to probably push the rest of the altcoins, and I think NFTs are going to be a part of that. It also is, I think, an element of availability. I mean, Veve was brand new. The app, kind of didn't work. Now it's a little bit further along. Now there's a lot of other projects. OpenSea's been around a while longer. It's just more, as time goes by, it becomes less of a fringe thing, although it's still super fringe, as we know. But more and more people, just become more comfortable with it and want to take a chance. And what I've said is I feel like, at least in the, and I could be wrong, I don't have the numbers, but I feel like in Veve there's like 5,000, people that buy stuff. And there's all kinds of different measurements. Maybe it's 10,000, but like there's core users of like 5,000. I feel like that doesn't mean you buy something every day, or that doesn't mean you go for every drop, but I feel like there's like 5,000. So if you can even double that, and it's truly an international company where you're going to potentially get people from Australia to Europe to the United States to Asia. Well, not really Asia yet, but we know they're working on it.
yeah.
Can you find 5,000 people to double it? That seems really possible.
Right. That's so interesting. But like at the same time, right? Everybody's like always looking to get crypto rich or NFT rich. And I know that you're also like a businessman. Like I know that, you're an innovator, that you've got a lot of intelligence when it comes to design and things like that from kind of a software and engineering kind of perspective. And like, one thing that I know that we talk about is that hard work is, it goes without saying. Like if you really want to make it, there's a lot that goes into it. So I guess what my point is here is like, how many people do you think are really trying to dig into Veve, like hoping to get like a 500x and retire? And is that maybe not necessarily like the right mindset, going into this as like more like this is more maybe a hobby, or this is like a collecting thing? Like what's your stance on that?
I mean, I generally think it's a hobby. So,
Right.
And let me just bring it back to physical comics. And I've been collecting that for a long time, and certain points throughout my collecting physical comics, I've gotten really serious about it, or whatever you want to call it. I'm really trying to find these, and I would be ordering them, through the distributor to get 35% off the cover price. So instead of even paying $5, I was paying, $2 $2 and like 30 cents for a comic, right?
Wow.
And so with all that, and I felt like I was pretty good about it, read it all, go through the all the different catalogs even before these comics came out. And I did all that and sold on eBay and all this stuff, and I was making $2,000 a year.
Right.
So to do more, obviously we all can do the math. I double it to $4,000 a year. And I actually basically just got to basically become an online comic book company. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so at least in the physical world, it's pretty rough. And then you start talking about inventory, because the problem is so many of the comics don't hit, right? They end up, you buy them for $2.65 and you can't even sell them for $1, right?
Right.
So now you take that into Veve, and the there's kind of two things working for us here. Number one is they're basically only giving us the best hits. Even the comics that are really not that big of a comic. I mean, I guess there's some that are not that good, but 90% of the comics that we're getting on VV are great comics, key comics. So you kind of can't miss the, and in the world of physical comics, when you have like a smaller print run, it might be 37,000. That's a small print run. And if you have like a major print run, it's going to be over 100,000, 200,000. And, you know, in the olden days, in the 90s, they had print runs of like 500,000, a million, you know.
Damn.
So we do have scarcity on our side with VV. The problem is, of course, and, you know, this has been debated back and forth a ton, is that these are not the real versions of them, of course. There's some sort of facsimile, not really facsimile, virtual license. We don't know what these are yet. And so it's tough to understand how they're going to play out in the real world and where they're going to go. But the price reflects that. In other words, if we knew 100% that this Journey into Mystery 83, first appearance of Thor, was like the de facto awesome digital, it wouldn't be going for $30.
Right.
When there's only, I think, 6,000 commons or something like that. So the price is baked into the fact that we just don't know what these things are yet. So you're taking a risk. And so you're right to go all out. To your first question is, do you think you could? I think it's a hobby. I don't think we know what's going on here quite yet.
Man, I love that answer because, you know, this is something that we talked about last time. It's like, even though we have the first appearance in the digital format, you know, what does that mean? Because there's so many then other components to it, like the interoperability factor, you know, the blockchain, the verification. Is there uniformity amongst different collectors as to what this really means, you know? But I think what the speculation is, like what we chatted about, was like, as we see more and more adoption into the digital realm, then that's maybe when these things take on you know, more significance. But will they ever be the same as that AF-15 that Stan Lee drew up? And, you know, you could smell the old paper. Like, no, I don't think they'll get there. But I also like the fact that they're like a historical artifact that are like pristine forever, that can, you know, continue with us in 100 years and maybe even be relevant in 100 years when everything's AI and digital, and, you know, so it's a chance, right? And it's a hobby. Yeah.
And it's always a chance. Like, you know, it's the same as when I, you know, bought Bitcoin back in the day, right? It's a chance. You can see what it could be. Because even then, back then, this is going to be the currency. No one's going to be using the US dollar anymore. They're only going to use Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah.
Right,
you know, I mean, that's like the Hail Mary ridiculous, you know, I mean, that's, you know, ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at these comics or these collectibles, obviously we know all of them. They're, you know, fantastic. Todd, Walt, you know, you name them all, right? They're all Superman, you know, they're all unbelievable. And, you know, it's just the what if, right? What if VV turns into the Walmart, like they've always said, of collectibles, and they are holding the interoperability keys to all these different metaverses, and it's the store for them all, right?
Right.
And you know, we were lucky enough to get in and get that Todd or get that AF-15. Whoa, right? Whoa, because now you're talking about Iona partners. There's only 4,000 of them,
right?
And it's it's going to be bonkers how much it's going to be worth.
Yeah. So this is fascinating, right? Because, you know, on that same point too, like a lot of people are still fighting it, right? Like we had that Stargate drop here. Let me see if I could actually share my screen. I just want to read you some of these comments. Okay, 1 second.
Are you a Stargate guy?
You know what? I'll be honest. I barely know anything about it, but it was a good friend of mine sent it to me, and he's like, just check out some of these comments, right? So Veve, obviously, you know, or Gate World posted, and they said we'll be partnering with Veve for these you know, these NFTs, and some of the comments were like, you know, excuse me while I vomit. Well, that's unfortunate, you know. And then the Veve community came in and is like kind of helped balance the comment section, but for the most part, people that were like big fans, you know, of Stargate, like in the real world, hate it. And that's where I'm just like, okay, like how much, you know, how many signs does somebody need, right? You have Apple Vision Pro coming out, you have all these major companies, like, you know, moving into digital media. You see, you know, Blockbuster and things like that go completely bankrupt, and now we're kind of seeing the movement into digital collectibles, and it's like people that are, you know, like really big believers in this stuff, or in the physical stuff, don't believe it at all. And then I thought one comment was perfect. It was by Double Cool. He goes, "I've always been confused by sci-fi fans who are stuck in the past, but you know, you can't wait for the drop, right?" Like, it's just funny, like, you're a future thinker, you care about the future in sci-fi, but yet, like, you can't see, you know, 10 feet in front of you. So I don't know, like, I just was curious to hear your thoughts on that too.
Well, and I'm relatively new to Twitter. I think I've only been using Twitter for like a couple years.
Yeah,
So, number one, it's you get such a crazy segment of the fan base on Twitter.
right.
And when I use the word crazy, I am using it correctly. They're they're you know, half of them hate everything, half of them, it just it's nonsensical, illogical. You know, they just
Right.
want to get some retweets, so they'd say whatever, right? You could say that they're giving them all $1 million of Stargate, whatever, and they'd probably hate it all. But so
Mhm.
that's some of it. But a lot of it is they probably don't understand. They've heard somewhere that NFTs are a scam. They don't understand. They just don't get the utility of it. They don't get it, right?
Mhm.
So they'll get it when a couple years from now, when a lot of people have Vision Pros and they're running around and they go to their friend's house and they have a cool Stargate in the back and they're like, wow, I want a Stargate. How do I get one? And they're like, well, they came out a long time ago and there's only 2,000 of them or whatever there are. And they're like,
Right.
oh, darn.
Yeah. I think that sums it up. And you could buy mine for $2,000.
And you can buy mine for $2,000. Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's hilarious, man. And I guess with that, like, you know, are you noticing any kind of impact right now within like your local comic book stores and things like that on just potentially fewer people, or like, you know, or even like the, you know, comic book store owners feeling threatened by this digital landscape? Like, what's been the impact for you?
I don't really talk about it because, they all everybody hates it. So I still think,
Yeah.
and in comics and crypto is with me on this,
Mm,
5% of physical comic book people are into NFTs. And when people ask me, and I have friends with a lot of the YouTubers and, et cetera, physical YouTubers, and they're all, how's it going over there? And they know they're not asking me because they don't know. They know it's down. They know we're down, 95%. And I'm real honest about it. I'm like, it's down 95%,
right.
Um, and so they're kind of reveling in the fact that they think that NFTs have died and that was a Cabbage Patch thing and it's over. That's what they all think
Mm,
right now. But what they, we obviously are seeing some in the V market, in the comic book market in general, from the digital perspective, we're seeing some movement upwards, just to, in general, and potentially, hopefully, we'll see more. But it's just guys go through a couple cycles, and
right.
it's just there's three things that are going to happen. Is it's they're gonna most people know what VV is now, whereas before in the last cycle, none of them knew what it was, right? Most people
Right.
know that they're digital representations, there's scarcity, they have some value, they fluctuate, but they still don't get on board. But it's better because at least they know what it is and they know what they're
Mm,
hating. But and as Randy said on his channel, and we don't know, right? That there's something going on with Marvel and Veve that's going to be announced here in a little bit at some convention coming up.
right.
We don't know what that is, but that Dan and David aren't flying to Texas for fun. And, Marvel's there. And maybe it's just to continue to talk about their comics or whatever. But, it's just a game of money. And no one wants to talk about money, but it's money. It's, I've done some numbers on my channel, but
Mm,
the margins and the amount of profit that Marvel makes off of their comics is slim to none. And some years, I bet you
right.
they lose. And the years that are good, it's probably not even that good. But what are you going to do? Are you going to stop making Spider-Man comics? You're going to not continue to push that IP that then you can make billions off of by selling lunch boxes and, you know, posters and movies. So it might
Right.
be just, hey, we can cut even on this thing and we got to keep it going and keep creating new IP. Or at this point, though, I think if they could then move to a more digital format, which we can all see, they could be highly profitable. But they're not gonna like say we're not making any of these, comics anymore physically. But as Randy had said on his channel, and a lot of us have speculated for years, is maybe they'll do a dual release. They'll release the physicals and they'll release the ones on Veve at the same time.
Wow, that would be cool, right? And try to play both markets. Yeah.
And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Right.
The cost is zero because they have to make these in digital format because they release them on Marvel Unlimited.
Yeah.
And so now what happens on Marvel Unlimited is it's a subscription-based thing. It's $15 a month. You get all the comics, which is awesome, right? But you get them 6 months late. So you got to wait. And if you really want to learn about, what happened to Venom in issue 27, you got to wait, right? And from a spec perspective, that's bad because you want to know that Venom 27, Venom died or whatever it is so that you can go buy more or whatever your game is if you're trying to speculate on that particular comic. If you're just reading Marvel Unlimited, you wouldn't know that, right? So I think that if they do dual releases of, they release it, or maybe it's even a day or two later. So in other words, all comics come out on Wednesdays. That's just what they do. Both. Well, now DC's actually moving back to that too. So DC and Marvel comics always come out on Wednesday. So if you go to a comic book store on Wednesday at 10 a.m., you're going to see a big line. Well, not a big, but a line of nerdy people that look like me that are kind of smelly that are waiting for the store to open so they can run in there and buy some comics. It happens every 10 a.m. at every comic book store.
Right. That's awesome, Sleeping. And, people are agreeing with you, man. People are saying, I went to 6 comic shops here. Only one of them actually heard me out. Other people are saying, hey, my comic book shop shut down 3 months ago. I have to drive now an hour away if I want to get into one. So, I mean, we're kind of seeing the blockbuster effect. Maybe it's a lot slower. But then I start thinking, like, what might be the relevancy in 10 years of a physical comic, especially a graded comic over something that's digital, when the digital use case would be so much higher, right? Because a physical comic, you can see it, you can touch it, you can smell it. So there's, touch and smell is something you can do over the digital. But with the digital, it's portable. You can make money. You can rent it out. There's so much more use case. So, yeah.
Well, here's another thing that I'll tell you that is, dirty little secret of everyone to talk about physical comic book is that most physical comic book collectors, even myself, I go buy 10 comics at the comic book store. There's probably 3 I'm interested in and 7 I'm buying because of spec. Like, I think this is going to be worth something. Why? When they come out with a comic and they have the A cover and the B cover and the C cover and the 1 in 25 variant, why would anybody buy the 1 in 25 variant other than maybe they really like the cover or the story? Well, if you like the story, you're just going to buy the cover A, right?
Right.
So most comic book collectors are actually in it to attempt to make money.
Right.
So if you extrapolate that out and you have a lot of comics in your basement like me, why not just do it? You can do the same thing if you were just to do it digitally. You're making money. You're trying to attempt to make money. You can see the covers. The covers are beautiful. The art is beautiful. There's all these other elements. So if you're purely only looking at it from the money perspective, digital, physical, whatever, right? Just buy whatever, spec on it, and try and make money on it. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So, but of course, there is an element of physical comic book collectors that really do like the physical thing, touch it, smell it, etc. So it's not apples to apples there. But what happens if you're a really hardcore person that only thought about money and you like comics, you could go to the comic book store, buy the 3 comics that you want to have physically to touch, and then go spec to Veve. Let's just pretend Veve was selling. Then go buy your other 7 from Veve because, like you said, you don't have any. They're never going to get worn down. There's never going to be cost. There's never going to be, storage costs. You don't have to bag and board them. You don't have to worry about a fire. So and let me just talk about the spec game. So in the game of physical comics, and we do it on Veve too, is Veve is different because we're basically getting all the best comics. Like, here's Journey into Mystery 83 is the first appearance of Thor. Everybody buys it on the drop, attempts to get, I can't remember, that was a $20 one, I bet. So for $20, and then that Well, if you get the secret rare, you could make hundreds. And if you get a common, maybe it's going to sell for 30. So you could, make almost double your money.
Right.
But in the comic book world, all the comics are out. So what you're doing is, Spider-Man, whatever, 155 comes out, and you've read and watched YouTube channels that this specific one, I'll make it up, Mary Jane might die. So you're making a guess. So you get to the comic book store, you run in there, you open it up, you're paging through the thing, and yep, she dies. So they have 10 of them, and you're like, can I buy 8 of these? And then the comic book guy says, no, I'm trying to save it for other people, but I'll let you buy 2. So then you buy 2, and everybody else is doing the same thing. And then you take your other one, you throw it on eBay, you paid $5 for it, you throw it on eBay for 15, someone buys it because Mary Jane died in that issue. That's kind of like the Spec Game, right?
Right. And is it more like the fun of it? Because the money aspect is so minimal sometimes.
So minimal. It is the fun of it, right?
There's some fun, sort of right?
Weird, and it's very nerdy, very, and I love it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the basis of, if you watch the first year of my channel, it's like, did you know that in Venom 9, it's some crazy nerdy idea that I have, and I have some of them over here. I can show you one here. I'll show you one right now.
Sweet.
So we have Silver Surfer Black number 1 on the app.
Right.
Okay. Silver Surfer Black number 1 is on the app. This is Silver Surfer Black number 2.
Wow.
This is cover A. Trad Moore is the artist. It's beautiful. Very odd. He's a kind of an interesting artist. People love or hate him. Kind of like Peach Momoko. People love or hate her. Right. But anyways, Trad Moore is the artist. This is Silver Surfer Black 2. Now, a couple significant things about this. Number 1, Silver Surfer Black, because Silver Surfer is a big character, I think they printed like 100,000 of them. The second one, they only printed like 40,000 or something like that, because it always goes lower because they don't think it's going to, people like the first issue, but then don't buy the second issue.
Right.
Anyways, the interesting thing about this, sorry, spoiler alert, is he fights Noel, who's this bad guy who's kind of like the king of the symbiotes. He gets a bunch of the symbiote on him, and he turns into like this venomized version of Silver Surfer called the Void Knight. This is the first appearance of the Void Knight. Okay, that's great. Let me show you what he looks like. This is what the Void Knight looks like. So this is Silver Surfer Black. This is a very rare variant. Hard to find. Okay? And you're like, I don't know, and I've never heard of this, and he's never returned in any other comic to my knowledge, and I know a lot of Silver Surfer comics, so I would know if the Void Knight were to return. But you know what's interesting? Is there's a video game that's very popular called Marvel Champions, and he appeared in that video game, and he is a super powerful character.
Wow.
So Marvel has not forgotten about the Void Knight. In fact, he's so big, they put him into their video game, and he's now a major character.
Damn.
So this is a book you buy for $6. You hold it, and then you pray later on that the Void Knight becomes a big character, or maybe he becomes a bad guy, or whatever it might be, right? 5 to 10 years from now, and then this book is worth $50, and so you've gone from $6 to $50, and you think you're a genius. But once again, this is not a lot of money, but it's just the game, right? This is the game of comics.
Man, I love you kind of going through that and sharing that, and that's a beautiful cover. And that's the same thing. I was a card collector, so similar kind of thing, right? Like you'd get something for cheap, you try to like flip it. But one thing I was going to ask you was like, Veve's really taken that away in a sense recently with like less flipping opportunities and like, I know you're going to share one more comic, but I just want to get that thought out, because I'm like, if that's the game, right? If the game is like, what kind of incremental gains can I get? What kind of, opportunities can I think about flipping? That's the fun part. Cause and I just think like before it was such a casino. I don't know.
But Veve actually has opportunities like that if you know comics. So here's a comic that is on Veve. This is Spider-Man 2. I don't know how much it costs. $2. So, and we know, I put it on my website. So this is the first appearance of Miles Morales, the bad version of Miles Morales. So the normal version of Miles Morales appears in Universe 610. This is the 616, and Miles Morales in the 616 is the bad guy. We have this on the app, and it's worth nothing. Okay. But the speculation is that in the next Spider-Man movie, they're going to introduce Miles Morales. I have always said, I wonder if they're not going to introduce the one we're used to, but they introduced the bad version of Miles Morales before they show us the good version of Miles Morales in the MCU. And the bad version of Miles Morales goes on to become a different bad guy, et cetera, right? But I'm saying you buy it for $2 on Veve right now. He shows up in the next Spider-Man movie as the bad guy. People love him, right? And his story, evolves over a couple of movies. There's only, I don't even know how many of these there were. We'd have to look, maybe 6,000. I don't even know how much the mint number on this one. But this is not going to be $2.
Right.
It's not going to go to $100, but maybe it goes to 25.
Right.
And you bought 10. That's some profit. So that's more of the comic spec game that can be played on Veve.
Right.
You buy the $2 ones because you think there's some sort of play.
Love that. And that makes perfect sense, right? And it's nice sleeping to hear, because I don't think a lot of the crypto guys that came into Veve know a lot about that spec game and why people are like, hoarding, for instance, 15, 20 comics, because everyone's like, oh, what are you doing with those? You're just trying to manipulate the market. They don't get the fact that this is like a 3-year play, or that, you're really kind of gearing up for something else, So that's pretty cool. And I just want to address this one comment. I had Omicron here, sent in a little money. So thanks for that, man. He goes, what collectible or comic would you wager 100% of your MCP for if it were to drop? So Sleeping, I'll let you take that one, brother.
Well, the negative of it is these blind boxes, right? So
Right.
you throw a bunch of MCP into it, and then you don't get the secret rare. I did some numbers around that. I think when you're going to see some, and they know, they're not stupid. These Veve guys can do math, right?
Right.
So there's going to be a thing that comes out, and maybe it's Wolverine is one that we always talk about, and there's a lot of other ones, Pokemon, or all the other ones right. And if they allow us, a shot at getting the SR or something like that, I think people are going to burn a lot of MCP. For me personally, it might be Wolverine. And everybody said if they do a Miles scenario, which I could really see them doing a Miles type drop with Wolverine. So that would be 3 different rarities. All 3 are super cool. The rare one, I think, has 2,000. The ultra rare has 1,000, of course. And then with Miles, the SR has 100 or 250, I think.
250, yeah.
But they held a bunch back, so there's only 160 available or something. Something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So I think if they do that with Wolverine, and like I said, I think there's about 5,000 people on the app. Everybody's going to go for that. You're not going to get it most likely. So then you'd burn a bunch of MCP points to try and get it.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And dude, I don't know if you have this problem that I have, but like a lot of times I'm just at work or something, and it's like collectibles comics are going through my head, and I'm trying to focus on something. How do you compartmentalize that? Like, because I know you're a busy guy. I mean, I'm looking in your office, or if this is just your playroom behind you, and you got everything around you, but it's like, a lot of the times my head even goes to like, oh, how could I flip this, or how could I get into that? And it's all about, crypto, NFTs, collectibles. Is there kind of some strategies you have there, like where it's like 2 hours hard time, or are you like me?
My mind is a disaster. I actually do different types of things to try to calm it down, and I do, and everybody has to learn how to play mind games with themselves. And it's funny because my dad taught me this one, which is a weird one, but I do it, which is because like in college, you don't want to study, right? I never want to study or whatever it might be, right? And my dad would say, what you have to do is trick yourself to start, because once you start, then you're good to go. Mm-hmm. So what I do is, like, if I wanted to, I had to study for a test or something like that, I would say to myself, I'm only going to study for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to go play basketball or something like that. And of course, once I got going, then I would actually end up studying like an hour, and then I would go play basketball or whatever. But it's a trick. It's funny because now I'm old, right? And I still do that. So I'll be like, thinking about all this crap, and I'll be like, all right, got to settle down here and work on some stuff, some business stuff or whatever. So I'm only going to work 10. It's like a weird, you're like tricking your own mind. It's ridiculous. I don't know. That's what I do. And the other thing I do is that most people notice is I'm a big runner. I think you're a runner too, right?
Right. Yeah. So, like I've seldom, like I was running a lot more last year. I tapered off a bit, but yeah.
So I run about well, sometimes I run as much as 5 times a week. Most time I end up going 4 times. I generally go about 5K. So it's not anything crazy. And it's just, I think, really important. I tell everybody to do that because when I'm running, I don't have my phone and there's no internet. And so there's nothing to do but run and think about wacky stuff. And I just, obviously the exercise is important, but it's almost more important to get away from my phone, my computer.
Yeah. Interesting. Because this is where so this kind of leads me into the next section of this question, which is if your mind is, busy, right? And there's a lot of things going on, then you come to your collection, not only on Veve, but maybe your digital collection, like collectible collection across all the different NFT platforms. And there's times where you're like, oh man, that's a huge play. I should sell off, this position here to get into that. But then, as we all know, when you're buying and selling things and you're chasing things all the time, and I've had this conversation with Clever Jerk a few times too, is you end up kind of more in the red, or you end up actually, you end up like switching something that was already gold brick for something that's, now a silver brick. And then now you want to chase back what you used to have. So where is that? Is this a very technical thing for you, where it's like an Excel spreadsheet? It's like, okay, 60% has to stay, or is this more just like fluid? Like, what does that look like?
Well, the problem is that we don't have enough market action in my mind to make those types of moves.
Right.
So in other words, like, and most people know, like I have a ton of Silver Surfers. Well, I don't have a ton. I have like 10 Silver. I don't even remember how many Silver Surfers I have because I sold some. So I might actually be down to 6. Let's use a better example. Okay, like NYX3, first appearance of X23. Okay, I have like 100 uncommons or something like that. I don't even know. Okay, I couldn't move out of that position if I wanted to. There's nobody. I'm stuck, right? Unless I put them out there for 10 cents, then they'd all sell. So those types of moves, in my mind, are too difficult to make with where the market is right now. And I don't want to I believe too much in that collectible to take a haircut like that. And so that's just my opinion, but on the other hand, if you think something is not going to go, you got to sell it, right? You just got to get whatever you can for it.
Right.
And so the other thing which could be a play is that if you can get enough money out of it, then you could go over here and times 10 your money, and then you're in the, that kind of game. But we just simply at this point in the game, in the market, especially the Veve market, I don't think you can maneuver around like that. Now, we know what it was before, right?
Correct.
You could say, all right, I'm going to quick sell my Walt for 9K, then take, $9,000 or whatever, and buy 9 of these at one. I mean, there was moves to be made.
You got it. That's where I wanted to lead with this, because this is where I find it interesting that you say that, because even for me, I would be willing to take a 20% loss on something because I knew the opportunity cost was so high, right? And that's kind of, faded down for probably a few reasons. First, there's probably fewer people, and second, there's a lot more collectibles to play with now. So it kind of saturates everything. But yeah.
No, I mean, perfect example. That's how I bought my Omi, right? I had, I have money in all these other places, and I really wanted to get into Omi, so I had to sell it. Now, for me, when I sell any stock, it's a taxable event, so I got to pay tax on it. So, quick math. Let's do easy math. I'm paying, 35%, or actually it was long term. So 20%. I know it's different tax brackets in different countries, but whatever. Let's just do easy math. 20% on that. I lost 20% to move it over to buy Omi. But the concept was, I think the Omi is gonna, double, triple, whatever, right? So it makes up that 20%. In actuality, it went down 95%, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah, we won't talk about that. Yeah, for now, it'll go back up hopefully. But I mean, I guess on that same vein, Bitforex. It's funny. I said I was interviewing somebody special, and everybody's like, "Are you interviewing the Bitforex CEO?" That would
have been a good get. I think that guy might be in hiding.
Yeah. Any speculation on what's going on there?
No clue. No
clue.
I mean, I'm gonna say some bad stuff here, and maybe I'll get sued, or maybe you'll get sued to your channel. I don't know. It doesn't look good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just the facts. The facts is the website, disintegrated. Nobody is communicating at all. and it it doesn't look good. That's just my opinion. Maybe maybe I
Yeah.
know a lot of people are doing research and, oh, maybe it's insolvent, maybe this, maybe I don't know any of that. All I know is that it's bad. Luckily, I didn't have any. I had pushed all my stuff into my ledger, eons ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I did buy some Omi a couple months ago through MetaMask, and then I immediately moved that into the Veve app.
Nice.
But yeah, it's terrible, and it creates two problems, right? Number one, all those people that bought, they're probably, and their money's stuck, and they're probably not. They have a really bad taste in their mouth right now. So, how many of them are going to go buy more Omi? Not good, right? So that's bad. And then number two, it's, what happens to this 22 billion Omi or whatever,
Right.
depending on what it could flood back onto the market at any time. That's scary.
Right.
So I think, any person that's looking at investing, they're going to do that math and it's not going to add up, But the interesting thing is I think that, I still think that it's, now that's, bad. And I'll discuss that in a second, but it's still, the company is still interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's the leader in the NFT space for licensed digital collectibles, and they're doing all this stuff. Some of it's secret and we don't even know. It kind of feels like they're just getting their footing and they're ready to really start running. So it's just really, really crappy for those people who lost their money.
Yeah, and I think I echo exactly what you're saying too. There's not much that can be said. It's just kind of an unfortunate situation. It looks like they're trying their best to reach out and communicate to see what the status update is, but it's hard. It's
And I don't, Comey, everybody's like, oh, they should do this and they should do that, and they can't. I mean, they're not. It's not even their company. They can't even. They're going to start saying stuff about what another company's. I mean, there's probably legal. They're just. Yeah. I think they're being transparent of even saying they've reached out to them, which is good of them to say. And maybe people say, oh, you're just a shill for Comey or blah. No, I'm serious. I mean, any normal company is not going to talk about another company that's like having massive problems, could have been hacked, could have been, they can't, they got to kind of be kind of tight-lipped on it all.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, man. And I think that's where my head's at too. And I look at sometimes now too, even though there's some sentiment that's negative around Omi, like at the same time, there's a lot of good that has happened as well, right? With the deflationary mechanism, with the bronze tickets coming out, with the MCP points, and I guess what people are saying is this should have happened a long time ago. But at the same time, I just keep thinking well, at least there's some progress now. And then that leads me into the Disney universe where I'm like, well, wait a second. Is this, and I'm not sure if you watched my little video where I was speculating.
I did. That was a good video.
Okay, good. Because I was just speculating, but I was like, it would be if I'm just thinking about it from Disney leadership, right? Who are the most loyal people in the digital collectible space? Well, it's Veve, right? That's where the majority of your IP is at. Okay, well, how do we, gear them up for maybe the next evolution of this? Well, we would probably want to do something with them, or at least, we wouldn't want to just go completely elsewhere and try to do something new and start a fire over there. Like when we've got the crews here, so I don't know.
Any company, right? They're gonna, when you're establishing a new product, you're going to try and find, you got to figure out if it's viable first, right? And then you're going to try and find some users that are going to be your core users that you can build off of. I think Disney is probably, I would guess, they could maybe think they could do it themselves. I'm not sure. But what's interesting is they have given licenses to do other things like the Pinnacle stuff, Crypt Toys, other things. And, those probably have some traction, but probably nothing like Veve, right? And so they've probably learned enough to know that, wow, this is a very, prickly environment. We have to do things in a certain way. And we could blow a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, and come away with nothing if we do this improperly. Go talk to Recur about that. And, it's this is the type of thing which is kind of bleeding edge technology, which large companies certainly can do and do, but why not let some other smaller company, work it out, and then we'll just buy them later? Like that's generally how it's done, right?
Yeah.
Especially in these kind of crazy, really bleeding edge technologies, environments. And that's why, and as a guy who starts companies, that's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to be the person who makes that company that, the other companies are like, we really could probably make that company, but that would cost us, 5, 10 million, maybe 20, 30 million a mark. That might be a $50 million deal for us. Let's just let you fool around in this for a couple years, and then we'll just buy you. That's why those acquisitions are done.
So that was where my head went, is like, okay, it's Veve bought out. And then I was, okay. So then I started thinking, is this why there were so many delays, and they've been kind of, I'm just gonna be honest, farting around for 2 years. At least that's what it feels like. Cause you're like, okay, there's been a lot of slow development, have they just been bought out and they're just kind of waiting for everything to be completely signed off, or like, this Disney universe to come to effect, or maybe it's another 2 years from now. So I didn't really know, like, that was kind of just a thought I had. Yeah.
I mean, I think, and I've been in it like 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
And, you can run 2.5 years pretty fast in a company and not do the right things. I've done it, before.
Right.
You're working your ass off and you're just doing wrong things. The biggest red flag, and I actually should have known it myself, because I actually made a video of it and I didn't even listen to myself. How is that even possible? Was right after the IMX. Remember how we moved from GoChain to IMX? And that was a really big project.
Yeah.
And they were really proud of themselves, and we were proud of them when they completed it. And they completed around like December or something like that 2 years ago. And Dan said, now that this is done, we're going to be able to work on the MCP and other things. And we think this is going to be up and running in another couple months. So I guess the big red flag is he said it was going to be up and running in another couple months, and we didn't get it till, 2 years later, right? That's, I guess, the biggest red flag. But the red flag, and I actually pointed out one of my videos, was when he said, now that this is done, we can work on this. Because that implies that they had one dev team and they could only work on one thing at a time, and they had to do it in series rather than in parallel. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it gives you a little bit of insight into their development cycles. Right. And that meant they weren't as big as we thought, and they weren't as organized as we thought. And that should have been a red flag. You know what I mean? And now we have a lot of good things that happen, which kind of point in the other direction, which is, we get updates to the website and the app and the MCP, like all at the same time, implying they have multiple teams now, which they've said, but actually it's true. You can tell now, right? Because you can see the only thing we haven't really seen yet is any of the blockchain pieces that they had. They hired the blockchain team, I think they said about 6 months ago, and we haven't seen any of that yet.
Yeah.
Unless I could be saying wrong, but I don't think so.
No, I think you're right. I mean, and that's a good way of saying it, is like, it did take some time, and potentially because of the bear market too, at that point, it's survival mode. You're just trying to keep all your licensors happy. You're trying to keep the momentum up, and you just don't know, which fire to put out first, right? It's like you're just priority sequencing at that point. So it's interesting.
They did have, you could tell they were in kind of, and once again, we've seen it all. So they were in some pretty, and I've been in companies, in my companies, where you kind of get into this mode of firefighting, and you really are not proactive at all. And so we saw some of that. So the first thing, if you recall, I'm trying to rewind it 2 years, was the bots were out of control, and they did a bunch of stuff, and they were firefighting, and they turned off transfers, and they did all this stuff. So that was a battle that had to be won. It's arguable if they did or not, right? And then the next battle, because people were literally losing their minds, rightfully so, by the way, was that you couldn't get your money out of the app. Remember that?
I remember that,
literally
dude.
could not get your money out of the app.
Scary,
right?
Right?
It was a rug pull.
Yeah.
And so, super, I can't imagine how complicated that is, but really, really complicated.
Yeah.
And they got all the, I don't even know what they had to do. Probably a gazillion different things with a gazillion different companies. And then they finally were able to where you can withdraw money out of the app, which, now we do all the time, and it's great. But those are, I felt like that was firefighting mode, right?
I agree.
got to figure it out,
Yeah.
probably super hard.
It's so interesting that you say that because I think I'm also not doing them justice in a sense because it's all novel and it's new. And like even at New Zealand has some of the harshest restrictions in the world when it
I
comes
remember,
to a money transmitter license and everything. So it's like there's so many hurdles that they jump through, and it's pretty amazing that they even got through them. But I think what the issue, well, not the issue, but the way that it started with like, we just signed Disney, we just signed Marvel, and the size of the company in my mind, I'm like, is there 300-400 people working on this?
right.
To then being like, oh, wait a second, this is a very small team. And I'm like, wow, how the heck did they land Disney? Like that was my feeling after the fact. But now I'm seeing it turn back to where it was initially.
And 100%. And I just, when I listen to the interviews with the different, David Yu,
Yeah.
Dan, etc., maybe as a person who's been involved with running companies and other things, there's different things that I hear. And you hear stuff from that makes sense that I've done too, which is you hear David Yu say, like, I don't actually even know what's going on over there, which people get really bent out of shape. And maybe he shouldn't say it that way. He's such an honest guy, right? But it's true. Things get out of your control, and it's actually a sign in which you've put hopefully key people in that are managing that stuff, and you trust them, right? And they hired Mitch and all these other pieces,
Yeah.
right? And so it definitely feels like they have been able to start up and are leading a bunch of teams. Like David had said multiple times, Dan is leading the Veveverse team, right? And that's up and moving. And there was a delay. They did have a beta, and then there's a delay. And David said there was a piece of functionality he told them that 100% had to be in, and so they had to put that piece in. And maybe that piece is in now because they've done another round of beta user invites. Did you get invited or no?
I have, and I've yet to kind of check it out, but I'm definitely going to as well. I'm just like, I think like it's because I know it's still so beta that there's like a lot of building and things that people are telling me, but I'm put it this way, I haven't had the time to like dive in. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I don't want to just like surface look at it. I want to like experience it. So have you been invited?
I was invited. I haven't, same as you.
Nice.
I haven't had
Okay.
the time, so I need to fill out. There's some NDAs and other stuff I have to, and because of my positions and other companies, I have to be super careful with all that stuff. I can't just be signing stuff.
Yeah.
And so I might even, I'm pretty sure, have to like notify the board if I would sign any of that stuff and have our lawyer. It's just a big pain, and I just don't want to go through any of that stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. And dude, like just also having like a lot of the development background that you have, like how big are some of these issues that Veve is facing? Like I'll give you an example, right? Like I was looking at the amount of friggin' NFTs that Veve has for digital collectibles, and you look at like the edition sizes and you're looking like tens of millions, right? And then I'm thinking like, okay, do all these need to be tagged, and is like Mitch tagging these for like MCP points, and like what does that look like in the Veveverse? Like what would be the capacity if you're interacting with somebody, how many collectibles you could put somewhere? Like there's just so many complications. Like and I think like when I think about like the Veveverse, the reason why I was very skeptical initially is because I looked at like Meta and Facebook, and I'm like, hey, you're trying to attempt the the metaverse, and you're failing, and you're spending billions. So how is this like startup even going to give us like a remotely good thing, which I know they're doing, which is remarkable. But I'm just saying like it almost felt like a pipe dream when I heard Veveverse initially, and that's why I wanted to pick your brain on that.
Well, and I've been involved with some companies that have some pretty cool technologies. Some are novel, etc.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of designing some pretty complicated systems. I've been involved with some systems that are really, really, really big. And no one person does that, right? You have a team of people that do that. So but the elements and stuff that Veve is doing is like really crazy. And I'm not saying that, oh, you're just like you're a shill, you're like a moon boy. No, it's so the stuff that they're doing and the scale at which they're trying to do it at is pretty insane. And it's not that they have 10,000 versus 100,000 NFTs, because what you do is you really write an algorithm for that, and then it's going to manage, it's like if you can manage 100 products, your website can manage 100 products, it could handle 1,000. It doesn't really matter, right? It just has more in the bucket when you search, right?
And that's why I wanted to ask you.
You have to have a bigger database with more storage and stuff like that. So and it has to, you know, go to IMX and stuff like that. And there might be some performance issues they have to tweak there, which obviously they have over the years.
Yeah.
But it's more, in my mind, the complexity is, it's the interaction with all these variants of different licensors, contracts, on top of the fact that, and here's the crazy thing, and my company is in it too, is because my company does business in like 100 countries.
Wow.
And they're doing business in like more than 100 countries, and understanding all those laws is insane. And making your thing work with it all is madness. And so, and they are doing way more crazy stuff than my feeble little company does. So it's that you add that complexity. Then they're trying to do the Veveverse thing. Then they've got, people think they might be doing music. I mean, it's just madness upon madness. They've got the viewer. They've got the, it ends up just in everything compounds on top of itself. It is pretty insane. It's super insane.
And it's super insane that it's still working and expanding, right?
And here's a stupid comment after stupid comment I'm making here. But like, because of my background, I always think about, and I do this in my own company too, which is, okay, if you're going to build a competitor to Veve, what do you do? Right? Like, how would you build one? And they're so far ahead now, not to quote Randy, but Randy's like, well, too far, what I mean? But he's right, because okay, great. You got the crazy viewer. You got the phone app. Oh, well, now you got to build the web app.
Right.
Oh, you got the web app. Well, now you got to build the AR piece. Oh, you got it. But all your things have got to work in the AR. It's, half of them don't work in the AR. It's too slow. It doesn't work on the Android phone. It's just madness. Oh, you'd better pay out in all these different countries. Oh, you got to be able to buy through Apple Store. Oh, it's just madness. It goes on and on and on. Oh, now all your things better work in some sort of crazy metaverse. Yeah, I mean, it's madness upon madness. Now we're going to introduce music or whatever they say. Better play on your different. It just got to pay your licensors. It just madness. Oh, but the New Zealand post office wants to be paid like this. No, but the United States post office wants to be paid like it's just on and on and on. We got this deal for 8%, this deal for 22%. After you sell 22%, it's just madness. You probably need 55 people to even understand how to pay everybody.
So that's brilliant, Sleepin'. And so this is what I think. I just want to really kind of hone this message in, because being an average Joe like myself, when you see it, you're like, oh, well, it's pretty simple. Like you're dropping digital collectibles. Do you know what I mean? But when you start really analyzing it, and when you come from a business perspective and a developer perspective, you're like, this is actually insanity what they're doing here. So I feel like people need to take that in. And I guess, why wouldn't Veve, because we used to have all these great community updates from them. They'd come out on these awesome videos once a month. I really enjoyed that, right? Even the Twitter or the X calls. Why wouldn't they just come out like something similar to what you're saying, and just kind of explain from a macro lens, like all the stuff that they're doing? Because sometimes it just feels like they only give us just a small piece of the puzzle, and then we're left to think about what this means. So why wouldn't they just do like what you just said to me?
I think they've tried, and remember they had that website where they had the circles on it, and they this and that, and they missed all their deadlines. And in my world of software development that I know of, we miss the deadlines all the time. Software development is such a weird, wacko thing. I just think they're just going to go and do, kind of the Apple game where we got a bunch of stuff and we're going to release it when we release it, and, I know it's hard. I know it's hard for them to try to manage it all, but it does seem like their level of project management, which was, I even did a video about this year or two ago, was terrible. I think is much better now. Probably Mitch or whomever in there is making it. And you can tell, because here is like an example where they're meeting deadlines. And once again, I don't want to say everything they're doing is perfect, but I just think they're doing more right than wrong. Here's a perfect example. So we're sitting around doing nothing. And then last year they announced MCP Season 1 starts now. You can put your stuff on there. You're going to get points and blah, 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 blah. If you put your OMI onto the app, if you remember that. Okay.
Right.
So I was like, okay, great. Whatever. We all did it. We all got excited for 5 days and then we forgot about it. We started accumulating more points because we all put our OMI on the app. Okay. Yeah. But then Season 1 for this quarter started, and they gave us, they told us this quarter is season 1, blah, blah, blah. Then we'll start getting bronze tickets. And then season 2, I think, starts the next quarter, something like that.
Right.
So clearly they knew that season 0 was going to be fourth quarter last year. Season 1 is this quarter right now. And then season 2, and they're rolling out bronze tickets and other things and the wait list ability with season 1. So they must have planned it all out probably last fall, and they're hitting their deadlines, because if they didn't, season 1 wouldn't have come out a quarter later.
Right.
And season 1 is going to be done here soon. And like, if we don't get our bronze tickets, people are going to like jump out the windows, right? I think they're probably going to hit that deadline, and then there'll be something in season 2. I would suspect some of the stuff they've talked about, like we'll be able to use the bronze tickets, and maybe they'll have special things that we can use for our MCP tickets. It's planned. They're hitting deadlines. They're actually delivering functionality within their own private, like, time, project plans. It's good. In my mind, it's good. I know people might not like that, but I'm saying I think it's good.
Yeah, no, it's cool to say, and like I said, I love the developer perspective that you bring, because it really is making me kind of have more insight. But how do you think they approach the sweet spot, right, for the MCP? And this is what we talked about before, which was, give somebody like Michael Campa or yourself, or like some of these, big collectors, Dr. Profit, like something special there, or like just something that's like really, hey, you've done a ton of work, you've got all these things, but at the same time, if I'm a new, because I'll be honest, like me coming in now, like I like fewer things, high quality stuff, like the Miles Morales as an example, but I don't like to like just mass hoard a bunch of stuff. Like I just don't like I like where my money is, I guess. And so for me, the MCP was not really going to benefit me. But when I look now at like my collectibles, well, I'm like, well, now I have to flip, and I can't really flip. So guess where I'm going to go? I'm going to go in the crypto market now to make my money. That's where I'm going to make my money, and I'll come back here and I'll buy things, but it's not going to be like I'm moving within the app, if that makes sense. So they have to find a way to like get all these users, and the analytics of that are, I don't even know where you would start, first of all, to be able to like look at like, okay, what's that balance? Maybe you need an AI program to come in and look at like, the last 3 years history and come up with some kind of formula. But I do think that like I don't know if they're taking out an approach like we're just going to do it this way, or if they're considering like all the data that they have. And I guess, how would you even come up with that recipe? Do you know?
Madness,
right? Yeah.
I think, I think that I'm sure they had a ridiculous amount of discussions about it, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard both sides of the, we should give everything to the people with the master collectors, or we should give it's tough. And I get it. I know why people who have millions of MCP points want certain things and others, and I think they'll find a happy medium. But my biggest thing that I would always go back to, and it's funny because my wife, who doesn't know as much about it, I talk about it here and there, her biggest concern too in looking at it was, if it gets too wacko, new people are going to be too intimidated.
Right.
And right now, I think it's fine. One of the things, and I actually did this in a video a long time ago too, is I think the MCP program is a little bit too complicated. This, you get quarter points for this, but you can't, and these are diminishing margins, but these ones are not diminishing margins. You get complete this set, you get extra, but in this set, you don't. It's a little bit too complicated, but obviously they can change it now. All these people have made financial decisions based on it, but it is a little complicated. But I feel like they will find a happy medium, and it can be flexible, right? They can't just change it on a weekly basis, but they certainly could change up things on a seasonal basis.
Right.
And, I think they'll find that happy medium. But the biggest thing that, once again, I say is we need more people on the app, period. And I think even the big whales or whomever would admit to that. And so if the MCP becomes a piece that, prevents that, that's a problem.
Damn, I think you nailed that. And that's where we started from was all about community. and it was like about hanging out and chatting and like going on spaces. And I think like here's my thing is I think there needs to be an element of privacy as well, because I think a lot of people, they don't want their pants pulled down. Do you know what I'm trying to say? They don't want to say like, here's what, I'm not asleep and I don't have all these collectibles. I've only got like, let's say X amount in the app. Maybe I don't want to join in the Viviverse because I don't want to have to showcase, 40, 50 collectibles or 100 collectibles while this other guy's got 14,000. So like, but I still want to take part in it. And this is where I think like it needs to be this Viviverse component, in my opinion, needs to be like, hey, you can have an elaborate showroom or a place you can take somebody back to your home, and if you want to have those private chats or up to 10 people, but there needs to be a place where everyone can just kind of communicate and have these different sections and like, just be able to hang out. And I really think that's what's going to drive then the whole company a lot more forward, because then all those times you're going to be talking about what you're buying, what you're doing, but you don't necessarily need to be flaunting or like showcasing everything. Not everybody drives a Lamborghini. And so how do you make sure that like you're not exposed, or you're, are you still going to be welcomed and appreciated if you're not driving a Lamborghini? What does that look like?
It is intimidating because like if you watch Randy Doll, the guy's got, hundreds of millions only, right? It seems like it, and I think for the people that are here already, we've already picked up a lot of fun stuff. And you're right, 100%. We don't want to intimidate other people. I just think of, and I go back to this kind of concept. And it was funny because I was going through some Instagram, looking at Instagram, and I saw some cool statue. I can't even, it was a custom one, right? So, and I was like, it was actually a Silver Surfer statue. And I was like, oh my God, how many? There's probably like 5 of these, and they're probably like $5,000 a shot, which I think they actually were, right? But it was cool. Wow. Like, so that's it. The collector and me wanted to buy that because it was cool as hell. Right. And I was interested. I did some checking and figured out I didn't have enough money for it. Right. But at its core, that's what Veve needs to do. Right. They're broadcasting marketing. They're showing cool Spider-Man collectibles. They show people playing with them, and they want to be a part of that. Like if we are attracting people in that mode, I think we are going in the right direction, which is great because, you have the, collector at heart, all the other. I think the branding is on point from that perspective. What we don't want is it's still actually not that bad. And 99% of the people are here because of this is you go for a drop. I don't care if it's a piece of poop. You put $6 in, and then you can sell it within 22 seconds for $10,000. Like that mode is not going to take us, I think, to a lot of places.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think the mode that will take us is, the augmented reality feature, and like, seeing that friggin' Lamborghini Countach in AR from, the 1980s when it's 2040 and you're sitting in it.
Because when I was a kid, obviously watched TV, saw commercials, and, you saw some, and what did you see? They have commercials of kids. I was a kid playing with these Star Wars toys, right? And what do you want to do? You want to buy Star Wars toys so you can play with them. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous. But there's still that element of it all, right?
And
it's like they need, and a lot of the stuff that people are doing is fantastic and does do that, right? Incredibly creative ways that they're mixing and matching the different effects and different, it's so cool. They have the Batman right next to the Superman, next to the, you know what I mean? Next to Iron Man, So it's all right there. And the best marketing is probably the different things that people do on their own. But I think somewhere in there, we have to get other people to see that. And then they have to say, hey, that's cool. And then we're off to the races.
Yeah. And I feel like it's getting close. Like I saw something that Dr. Profit tweeted recently, and it was like Iron Man, but it wasn't from Veve, but it looks so real. Like they had the right. And I'm like, man, like for me, I'm like I love cars, and like a realistic car for me would be something like an Audi TT-RS, but I know I'll never get like a Porsche Carrera GT or something like that, because just it's another $400,000 more. But like if I could sit in it, if I could blow it up in with my Apple headset or whatever that's going to be, and and it looks just like it would in real life or similar, right? Like really high K or high 4K, 8K even quality vision. And I'm like checking it out. Like that would be worth it for me to spend a few $1,000s and show that off to friends. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that's where it's really going to start to hit people. And we talked about this before, but like the lighter technology in the house, you come over, you set the theme for Halloween, and you got, you know, different characters displayed in different places, and you know that person turns on their headset, they're walking through your home with you. But you know, maybe this might be a while, right? It might be like similar to the Golden Age comics that like people were eating over breakfast Hulk #1 and spilling, you know, milk and cereal on it, and it took 25 more years for people to say, hey, wait a second, this is actually something really special, you know?
There has to be, and we talked about this before too, but there has to be something of value that they can't get currently. And we already have some of that, right?
Yeah.
In other words, I can take my Hulk, you know, guy, put him in AR, take all kinds of crazy pictures. It's fun, you know. We did one today, right? And you know, one of the things that you saw with the Apple Vision goggles, because they're kind of, you know, everybody says these are awesome, but I don't know how I'm going to use them. You know what I mean? But one thing that everybody says is, I'm taking this thing on the airplane and I'm going to watch movies in my face, and I can't hear anybody else, and have a, you know, 100-inch screen in my face and watch movies on the airplane. Like everybody said that, right?
Right.
And it makes sense, right? If I traveled a lot, I'd probably buy one of those things because I want to watch movies, you know? And so one of the things that I always thought about comics is, I can read these comics super huge. Can you imagine how awesome the panels are going to be? And that's going to be an experience you cannot have with a physical one. I bet you it's going to be super awesome. A completely different way to read your comics. And people might just want that, right? It's just like, I don't need to watch, you know, if I'm on an airplane, I can watch on my phone, I can watch on my iPad, I can watch, you know, the little screen on the, you know, in front of you on the seat in front of you. But why not have an Apple Vision that's way cooler, right? And so I think there are potentially down the line, there's going to be some experiences that you can have that you're going to want to have. And then of course, AR and all this stuff is going to be a part of it.
That's a really cool point. And I think about like a comic I bought. Well, now it's Candy Digital, but like Wiz #2, I just like love the way the inside of the comic looks. It just looks so ancient and different. And there's like, you know, just like panels that I zoomed up on the computer, and I'm going like the Apple, you know, Mac desktop computer. It's a huge screen, and I'm like zooming in, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. And I, like you said, I'm like, I couldn't experience that even if I bought the comic and it's worth X amount of money, right?
Yeah. So I've read a lot of comics, obviously, and my go-to for reading comics now is on my iPad. Now, there's two reasons for that. Number one is, it's a pain in the butt to go into my boxes, go find the comic, take it out, attempt not to rip it in half. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And be careful, page through it, read it. It's fun. And then put it back in there, put it back in the long box, put it back on the, you know, it's a pain in the butt. And then I got to go get the next one if I want to read the next one. If you go to Marvel Unlimited, you can read them all. You can zoom into every panel. You can do whatever. And I don't have to take anything out of the long box and out of the, it's just, you know, people won't tell you, oh, I love to read the comic, I have to smell it or whatever. And I get that, but all the reading I do is on Marvel Unlimited. You know, I don't need to smell the comic and accidentally rip it in half, which I've done.
Only goes it only goes so far. Soon they're gonna have like some kind of fume emitter that'll give you the smell of the comic through the computer or something. Just like
the smell isn't that big a deal. I don't know why people always talk about the smell. I mean, there is a
it's the smell. It's not. They're just trying to look for a difference, you know. They're trying to find something.
Yeah.
So here's another one for you, Sleepin. Okay, so FA, right? We always talking about the importance of that, because we're saying, like, you know, how else can we distinguish, you know, what was first? And you see it across the entire collectible industry, like FA. But one thing that I always used to say was, oh, well, the Todd, it's the first DC, first digital collectible from Veve, and it's this huge thing, right? And I'm not saying it's not huge still, but what I'm trying to say is, like, now we've seen Backhouse, now we've seen the DC Comics, now we see McFarlane Digital, we see all this different IP, and this is just the starting. Like, I mean, give it another 10 years, it'll be everywhere on every blockchain, just be a crazy amount. You won't even know where to start, really. So what does that mean? Because I always thought all this is going to do over time is exasperate the importance of that first ever collectible. But it seems like, so far at least, that it's almost confusing it. That it seems like people are going to different places. And the only thing in my mind that could bring it back is uniformity, like some kind of company or something that says, like, this is the most important thing, or this will drop first and everybody agrees. So that's my take on that. I was curious to hear yours.
I don't think the company would necessarily say, it would just provide data, right? Like, just so that you
Exactly.
know, the first Batman was on Veve, blah, 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 or actually Go Chain or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the market is going to dictate it, right? And there's always weird things with the way the market works, and it never makes sense. Sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't, but the market will dictate what they think is most valuable. So perfect example would be, I don't want to get people mad at me, but I'll just say it. Perfect example would be Todd, right? So Todd is the first Batman on the blockchain. People might dispute that or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever, but and it's part of the Veve environment. Well, as we well know, there's an animated version on the McFarlane one, which is super beautiful and super awesome, and licensed directly out of Todd. And Todd was the guy who did that, So why is that one not worth more, right? And maybe in a different world it is. If we go to a different multiverse and it is worth more or whatever. But and in the end, maybe you fast forward 25 years and it is worth more. I don't know, right? And it's conceivable it could be worth more, especially if Veve were to go out of business suddenly or something. You know what I mean? Maybe it's the only one left and it's very valuable, whatever.
Yeah.
But the market is going to dictate, and right now, it generally, in my mind, is going to go with, and it seems to go with, the marketplace and the brand that supports that collectible. So Veve is really, really popular, and so it's able to support its collectibles and its FAs. So it'll be interesting because, for example, Cryptoids, they have like the first Darth Maul. So,
Yeah.
is that one gonna be worth more if they have another Darth Maul over on Veve, and they don't, of course, mint size matters. So the ecosystem, I think, does matter. And so we're still trying to figure it all out.
Yeah. I love that you said that, though, because I look at something like a Donnie, and if that were to drop, let's say, on a random platform right now, where, like, that would be worth nothing. But because it's on Veve, because everybody knows that season 1 was one of the first things, it was China locked, it was so scarce, and it's just a pure flex for anybody that knows Veve, then it's worth a ton, right? But I think that's where it's just interesting to think, like, because people kept saying, oh, we want interoperability and we want these things to be removed from Veve, but then you start to think, like, well, maybe the community is actually the things propelling the value of these. If you remove now the community and you're putting these on OpenSea or whatever Blur, maybe now, like, the interest won't be there, right? Or maybe it'll be there, but in a different way.
Yeah, it is, because basically collectibles are worthless. They are. Look at it behind me. Bunch of stuff. All this stuff is worthless. I don't know how much. I guess I could melt down the plastic. I don't know how much it's worth. 1 cent. I don't even know. Right. It is the community and kind of world and ecosystem that creates the FOMO that allows it to be worthwhile. And without that community and without that ecosystem, it really is quite worthless.
Yeah. And that's kind of like my thing right now, is like when I look at like Disney, right? Like, and I think, like, okay, well, what's the next step for you? Are you going to be like, what, we watch a movie and then you have the Disney Veve collectible that you could buy right after, and is it going to be kind of unlimited, or if this is going to be a limited edition, like, and what that means, like, is there going to be so much saturation then in 10 years time that, like, it's just not going to matter. It's just going to be, like, so accessible, like having a glass of water from the tap. You want to see something cool, you just put on the screen and it's there. Like, I don't know.
Well, I think Disney's model, and I don't know, you'd have to go talk to them, but from my outside view, the Disney model is we create these IPs, we own everything about them, and generally it's through a movie that's successful. And then we sell literally everything under the sun with that IP and make money off of it. So, you know, and someone said, like, if they can have a hit movie like Mulan or like, you know, Frozen, it literally is worth billions for the next 50 years because they can sell crap, make a sequel. It's just nonstop. Now, the problem is if they don't make one of those movies for a while, then they're kind of stuck. But they're, you know, Disney's been able to do that from, you know, all these different ones. And of course, then they've picked up new IP like Star Wars, Toy Story, whatever. But that's their kind of MO is we take this IP, license it on everything and make money. And I think they're saying, hey, guess what? There's this new realm in the world where we can license and make a crap ton of money, and it's called digital toys. And we're just gonna, you know, evaluate that and basically, you know, make as much money as we can off them. So, you know, we've seen multiple Mickey Mouses on the app. And I think we're going to see more Mickey Mouses and Minnie Mouses in different ways, shapes, and forms on Veve and everything else for the next 200 years, whatever.
Exactly.
And you're right. Some of them are going to sell for $1. When you go to the store in Disneyland, I haven't been there in a long time, but they have stuff there for $5 and they got stuff there for $200, right? They'll sell you any way, shape, or form.
They will. And this is where, like, I know this sucks. And I know, like, you know, this is a counterintuitive to the Master Collector program, but a lot of times, you know, you see the shiny, hot, new red toy always sell, right? And it goes up and it goes back down. And like, then, then the next thing's out, right? And you see that in crypto all the time as well. Like the next crypto gem comes out this year and everybody rotates into that. It's rare that you have something that's like stood the test of time. You know, as an example, in crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, that still is there when thousands of other have lived and died. So that's where it's like just tricky because I'm like, okay, well, what's going to live here? And that's where we like start to stack it up. We go first appearance, like Miles Morales, scarce, first appearance, first time on the app, you know, like all these different things. And you go, okay, this makes sense as a 5 to 10 year play. But you know, like but then again, the competing platform comes out in 5 years and it's on a bigger blockchain and it's interoperable. And then they start their own universe and it has gamification and whatever. And you get a skin that you can use around in AR. And now you're walking around with your avatar as Miles Morales. And then boom, this is like maybe forgotten about. And it doesn't. And this is where I think like collecting might just change over time too, because the people like I'll give you an example. Like there's kids next door to me here, and I gave him a box of Pokemon cards because I like just all these extras I had, and they're all shinies, but they're only like $2. And the kid didn't give a shit. Like he literally just was like, I want these. Like, what are you giving me this cardboard for? You know? So anyways, I know I threw a lot at you there, but it's just that's my thinking about it, you know?
So I think the core of what you're saying is kind of what and how is it going to be valued in the future, right?
Yeah.
And with a lot of different metaverses and a lot of different, and I think it comes down to the ecosystem. Can it survive? So here's a perfect example. And I don't know this because I don't play the game, but let's just say it. Okay. So Fortnite. Okay. So Fortnite, I'm assuming they have a Miles Morales skin. I don't know if they do or not. Let's just assume they do. Okay. Right. They probably have a Spider-Man one. Okay. Let's just say they have a Peter Parker Spider-Man. Okay. And I don't know how much it costs. $10, $15. You buy the skin, you run around as Peter Parker Spider-Man, and then you're tired, and then you go buy the next one, Thanos or whatever. The ecosystem isn't, I mean, people like to collect the skins there, but it's not an ecosystem of collecting like Veve.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So and that's a digital collectible. That's a legit digital collectible, that skin, right? The negative is that I don't think you can sell it, but they'll probably add that later. Maybe they'll add a marketplace for those skins later. Okay. Yeah. But it's a matter of, I think not only the ecosystem survives, but it's what type of behaviors do the people have within that ecosystem? And for better or worse, the behavior that they have developed here in Veve is these are collectibles, they're valuable. I'm going to try and keep them and then sell them to other people later. And therefore they pick up value and then you're able to use them and flex with them or whatever you want to talk about. See what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think the ecosystem matters. I think we're discovering that more and more. And maybe it is because it's so easy to develop. It's really not that easy, but it's easy to develop other ecosystems because it's all digital. Digital is naturally more easy than you just come up with your own line of toys or whatever. So maybe because it can be created so easily, the ones that have stood the test of time are that much more valuable, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
And
no,
Veve
that's
has been there, right?
yeah, and that's where I think like a lot of people agree on that. A lot of people that are here now have that same kind of mentality, and I've like pretty much thought it out, you know. But again, like what do you think the main reason is for a lot of these companies going digital? Like I know there's probably like there's opportunity cost, but do you think it's also just because like the profit margins are so much higher, the headaches are gone, and they're like, listen, like we can just we're getting a 30% on everything that we put out, everyone that's sold, we get like a certain amount of money. Do you think that's the main driver for
It's
the
probably
digital?
just, I mean, every company has their revenue sources, and if you can
Yeah,
develop a new one, that's awesome, And of course, the risk factor in terms of developing an NFT is probably relatively low. Now, the negative is that if it ends up becoming kind of scammy, that could hurt your brand, and you don't want to be associated with that.
yeah,
So that's where I think some of them might have tried on their own, and then now maybe something like a Veve or obviously the other ones seem to be um much safer because there's a lot of other brands that are doing it rather than you do. So the chances of it looking as like kind of a scam is less. Um, if you saw like McFarlane, I think they just signed Walking Dead or something like that recently to do some.
yeah.
I don't know if they're going to do, I don't know if that's only physical or if that's physical and digital, but obviously that's a huge IP. You can get a bunch of zombies walking
It's pretty
around, right?
cool. I love
Yeah,
that.
super
Yeah,
cool. But you can see that, I don't know who owns the brand Walking Dead, but they're just like, we're making these shows. How can we just make more money utilizing? Well, let's just try this too. I think it's just more revenue.
yeah. And I think that's where like during the pandemic we really saw that transition come through because everyone was bored at home and all these things. But here's where I get interested because I have a different perspective on the long term about physical stuff. Okay, so like for instance, like a lot of these comics that you have in the background, I think they're super awesome. I think they'll go up in value in the next 15, 20, 25 years. But then I think there's going to be a point in history where like a lot of the physical things aren't necessarily going to matter for a few reasons. The first thing is the target audience. Like comic books right now are relevant, but in 50 years from now, maybe it's like the virtual experiences are going to be so intense and incredible that like it's really not even going to come. There won't be a reason to read a book potentially, right? And so like a lot of people are holding these things always for the long term, but there's always a time to sell. There's always like a peak cycle, right? And and a lot of people don't believe that, but there is. And so I have this feeling that like we're gonna see a switch where like the physical items, like I said, not now, but it's gonna take a while. But I think it's gonna completely almost die off, and the relevancy there for new kids being brought up in the world that are born with. My daughter right now is 6 months old. She's got the Apple Vision Pro. Like I was born no phones, nothing was around. Now she's born into this new world, and I'm like, okay, so what's gonna matter for you when you're 2021 and you can buy it at 40? See what I mean? Like I don't know what the longevity is. So when I start thinking about comics and stuff on Veve, I'm like, well, maybe that's a 20, 30-year play, but maybe that's it. Maybe that peaks then an MC1, as historical and cool as it might be, it'll be like looking back into the 1850s and be like, well, what do you want to keep from there? An old rifle? Like there's just not much use case, right?
I think it just depends on, I think the for some of them the IPs are relevant to everybody because the movies and whatnot keep those, like Spider-Man relevant, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, some of them maybe not. I think you have a valid point. I was just thinking because you mentioned your daughter. I was thinking of my youngest daughter who's in third grade, who plays, those, Roblox and a lot of those other games. Your kid will
Yeah.
probably play those. But, what did she want for her birthday? And this is no lie. She wanted roadblock bucks. And then she goes in there and she buys skins and she buys different knickknacks and purses for her people that she runs around. She's
Wow.
buying digital collectibles, and
Yeah.
that is not going to be a foreign experience for her. Now, you go on the other side of it, if you look at my parents, which are much older, they've never purchased a digital collectible and probably never will. But, that's okay. I'm not, it is just interesting, like you said, what they are going to want. It's just like, my kids that are like in college, one of them in college, I remember when they were like 6 years old or something like that, because, everybody had a cell phone back there, a mobile phone. They went over to my parents' house and they came back and they're like, we saw something over there. And I'm like, what did you see? And they said, they have this phone over there and it's connected to the wall. Like they were like, but it's to your point. Like they would never want a phone connected to the wall.
Yeah.
And so your point is that when you're so used to digital things, like you're just like, those comics are actually really annoying. I have to put
Yeah.
them in boxes and stuff.
Yeah, and they cost 1.2 million because there's so few of them. Why do I even care?
I mean, the
Yeah.
museum wants one, and maybe
Yeah.
some really specialized collectors want one. But you're right, the masses are gonna be like, that's cool that you have that Silver Surfer #2, but
Yeah. Interesting. So I'm glad that you kind of see that too, because I'm like, okay, there's just a certain amount of time here. And this kind of like you see that transition now, like you said with Marvel saying, oh, we're gonna give you the physical and the digital. We'll sell both and then eventually get rid of the physical, right?
yeah, I think it's inevitable that Marvel does some sort of digital releases, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not Marvel. Maybe Marvel won't do it, but some of these independent will start going to it, like IDW or Image Comics. They'll just start moving because they're smaller and their margins are, they have to really watch it, right? And then
Mhm.
they'll lead the way, and then Marvel will follow, right? Those other people will break the ice, and then Marvel will follow, or DC will follow, or DC might do it because DC is almost always going out of business all the time, so maybe they have no choice to do something like that. But it's just they couldn't do it 3 years ago. That's it, because NFTs didn't exist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, why didn't they do the technology didn't exist yet.
Yeah. And so like man, when I look back just at Vivi and what they've accomplished now, and like they have so much of the world's IP of all the characters and all these things. It's like it's such a sleeping giant, and only now, I don't know if you're noticing, but like the mainstream media and stuff is kind of picking up on the what do they call, like RWAs, or like just like tokenizing everything. Like
Yep.
even BlackRock came out and said eventually everything will be tokenized. Your home, car, it's all going to be on the blockchain. So Vivi's already like completely captured the digital collectible market, right? Um, so do you really think it's going to have its day where like all of a sudden things gets turned upside down and people are like, whoa, wait a second, like what have I been missing this whole time with VV? Or do you think it'll stay super niche and be kind of like this really kind of high end collector's world for just like, guys like you, or like people that are like really kind of into this stuff? Or do you think it has an element there that can start to really hit the masses at a big, because I think it's niche right now from the way that I see it, but I think it has potential to go huge. But I just think there has to be gamification, there has to be other
It
things
has to
involved.
be gamification, but really, in my mind, the gamification is just another mechanism for marketing. It
Yeah.
has to be marketed. It
Right.
has to be marketed because you have to reach a bunch of people, and marketing is basically, I don't mean to say it this way, but it's basically, selling someone that this is so cool and it somehow makes sense to them and they want to spend their money on it. That's what marketing is about, right?
Yeah.
And so somewhere in there, they've got to do enough marketing that enough people think it's cool that they want to give it a shot. And
Yeah.
I mean, like, once again, it's the prime example of, you know, whoever it was over at, 20th Century Fox or whomever bought a crap ton of ads in the morning on Saturdays and showed all these kids playing with Star Wars toys, right? It appealed to me. And so obviously the Star Wars toy market took off, like mad.
Yeah.
And so somewhere in there, they've got to figure out a way to say that these digital things are cool, educate, and then, that's how it happens, right? That's how there's a lot of ways in which um that could work. But I feel like that's the ticket, right?
Yeah.
Somehow, and maybe gamification is the way they do it, you know. But that's really, I think, how it's got to go. Otherwise, it will always be niche. So let's take, for example, like look at some of the statues I have behind me. The statues I have behind me are niche. These statues are cool. They cost about anywhere between $25 to $1,000, and sometimes like the Venom statue behind me, like there's only 41 of them. That's a
Wow.
niche thing, right?
Yeah.
That's a niche. That's a niche statue. It's cool. I thought it's cool. 41 people thought it was cool and bought it, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of what VV is right now. We know that, but and statue buying is really niche. But I'll tell you what's a statue that's not niche is bobbleheads. Bobbleheads were somehow able to jump the shark or whatever you want to say it and break into the kind of broader market. And so everybody buys bobbleheads. It's super fun. The price point is right. They figured it out. And I think Veve can have everything, right? They can have the Lamborghini that's expensive, but then they have the Marvel Mighty. They're trying to do it, right? They're trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So this is really cool because I think you led me to this thinking of like almost like, okay, so we have like the digital toys, let's just say, right? And like right now, let's just take one of the things that are on Veve. You get 1 to 2 animations similar to a physical toy. You can pull the string in the back like on Woody and it moves and it does something silly, right? Now you can do that from a digital I guess perspective. But what happens if you can actually then do like AR gaming with that digital collectible, and you can move it around, you can actually do things with it? It's like way more interactive. That's where it could be a huge opportunity. But then like what's the limitation, like, and then how many competitors are there, like? And this is the other thing I was just going to say quickly, and then I'll kind of pass it back to you, because I know recently too, like AI generation has been crazy for content, right? Like you can just make anything now. And what I've been saying is that like the reason licenses are so important is because they limit the amount of content that can be created. Like, and with AI, you can just keep creating now forever, right? And it's only going to get easier and easier. And so, like, I think that just again stresses the importance of the limited IP and these digital toys, or whatever you want to call them, collectibles that Veve and other companies are making. But like, I just don't know, like, is that enough? Because you can go and play a PS5 game and be Miles Morales and be spinning and like, throwing your spider webs everywhere and doing way more cool shit than to just be like, let me touch, this button and it does a jump in augmented reality. Whoop-de-doo. Let's be real, right? Compared to some kind of like, the new GTA game that's coming out, or Grand Theft Auto 5 or 6 or whatever, that's going to be insane. So it's like, to really hit the masses, it's got to be something like really cool, like, I don't know.
It's the ownership element. You don't, I can
Mm,
get Miles Morales and jump around, but I don't own the guy and I can't resell it.
yeah.
So hopefully there's gonna be, only one first appearance of Miles Morales that you can sell and whatnot, right? That's the appeal, the ownership element of it. You can buy all these digital collectibles everywhere, but only the NFTs of these things can you resell. So once again, you can buy a million different skins of Fortnite. I shouldn't say it's because I don't exactly know, but I don't think you can resell them all, or whatever it might be. You can, and so, and of course they're going to build that in. Don't get me wrong, because they're going to want the money. They're going to want the transactional money. They're all going to be NFTs, right? But I think, it being in the beginning here, is interesting. And,
Yeah.
I think, we don't know, right? We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but from a collectible marketplace of licensed digital stuff, what do you want to call it? I think Veve's kind of the ones that have started it all. There's
Yeah.
something to be said about that.
There is. They're the number one player. They're the biggest player. They got the most going on. They've
And,
thrived,
and it's funny. They're the biggest player with 5,000 people. And there's a lot
crazy.
of people on the planet.
Crazy. I did the math this morning because my brother's like, how many people own Bitcoin, right? He's like, and he's like, what, 10%? And I said, no, it's less than 1%. It's 0.03. There's 55
Yeah.
million holders.
And that's really the problem with Bitcoin, right? There's just not enough of it. People are like, oh, everybody's going to move to Bitcoin. No,
Yeah.
there's like literally not enough of it to even use it as a normal currency within one country, right? There's
Yeah.
simply not enough of it. It's just an asset, right? It's not, it's a valid and interesting and decentralized and, all the things that are great about crypto, right?
Yeah.
And blockchain, but there's just not enough of it. And, I mean, that's why those people who do math, they're like, yeah, this thing is going to $1 million or whatever. Now, don't go buy a bunch of Bitcoin. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But
Yes.
it's an intriguing, and maybe we'll see it break, right? Because too many people try to buy it. It's actually non-functioning because as an asset, and we see the limitations of it technically, because literally, if it's that valuable and 1 million people, and there's way more than 1 million people on the planet, and 1 million people are trying to buy it any 1 second, it actually is physically or technically, and the tech behind it cannot function. So the thing is not function. That was one of the things that I was always say is like at super scale, maybe it actually cannot function.
I agree with that.
Because let's
yeah.
say it was just super, let's just pretend like everybody wanted it. And so everybody's putting a buy order in, like, and I say everybody, let's just say 5 million people put a buy, and actually this may even be possible, but at some level, 1 billion people put a buy-in order for Bitcoin. It's going to break. It actually can't work. There's not enough of it.
That's true. And that's where I think, like, but when we see, like, okay, only 55 million people are able to prop Bitcoin up to this insane world value, right? And like the whole world talks about it like 24/7. It's like making news every day. Then, what could 50,000 people do in this space? And I think it was Danny DeBull said this to me perfectly. He's like, the collectible sports card industry or the baseball card industry, I forget what he said, but he's like, it was like 100,000 people or something like that only, but it's able to,
I bet you the comic book industry is only 50 to 100,000 people,
which is crazy to me, but enough to put some of these books up to millions of dollars, right? So it goes to show me that we don't need a ton. We just need a lot of passionate people in here. Yeah.
And that's, I do believe the high-end comic books, anything over $100 or $500 is actually relatively rare in the comic book world, physical comic book world. We always see the big ones, right? But when someone's buying an AF-15 for $5 million or whatever it is, or Superman Action Comics, it's a piece of art. And a lot of those really, really rich people are buying all kinds of art. That's what they look at it as. It's an asset. They're buying it. It's fun. They've got way too much disposable income. You know what I mean? They buy all kinds of stuff from cars to, it's not even their comic collector. Some of them are, but you know what I mean?
It's just something cool to have.
Yeah. And the real marketplace of comics, physical comics, is obviously when they're selling them, for $5, there's obviously enough people to buy them. And then there's some secondary market, action.
Yeah. Cool. Listen, man, I feel bad because I know you're a busy man. I know you're doing so much out there, and I've held you on here now for an hour and 43 minutes, and I feel
it's been great. It doesn't feel like that long. It's been good.
I know it does, because we always get into these conversations. I'll tell everybody, last time we did this interview, I think we talked for a similar amount of time, and then we talked like for an hour after as well, because we should have probably just kept rolling. But I just want to respect your time, and I also want to highlight a lot of the people that were here, just kind of really like loving that you came on, and just like really kind of echo how much of a big player you are for this community, Sleeping, and just how bright you are, and everything that you share with us. You're really a mentor even for me, and for so many people out there. But it was just, I've been wanting to have you on for a while. We planned this over a month, and obviously you picked the best day to come on when Bitcoin spikes and the whole market's back in action. But thank you, bro.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, it's been fun. I wish I could do more stuff. I always think I'm going to get a break and I could do more videos and other stuff. And then maybe I will. And then I get sucked into some other nonsense. So it's just, it's just the nature of it all. But definitely, and everybody, and everybody knows that my DMs are open on Twitter. So if you have questions, about comics or anything, hit me up. And a lot of people do. So it's fun. It's definitely a good way to do it.
Perfect. And if you don't fall asleep yet, I'm sure everybody that's watching this does already, but his information is in the description below, so make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel, follow him on Twitter and or X, and we'll catch you all in the next video. Thanks, Sleeping.
Thanks.